Welcome to Cowboys. Where better to find ghosts than a graveyard? Now, this particular boot heel belongs to the Calico Township, located deep in California's Calico Mountains. Now, Calico started out as a silver mining town in the 1800s, and life here was anything but easy. So sit back, relax. I'm gonna go find me a pickaxe. Marina, why would somebody beat themselves up, work so hard on the faint hope of finding some silver?
Well, it was a job, and men got a pretty good wage. $4 a day was considered very good wage in the 1880s. There were miners here that were professional miners. Some of the men came from the British Isles, from the Cornwall area of England particularly, and this was in their families. They knew how to do it. There was a category at Calico and other places that did pay a mine owner to go in and get out the silver, but then the burden was on them to get that silver out and processed. So they had to take that into account if they were going to be that kind of a miner. But most of the men found it easier to sell out their mining claim and then work for the company themselves, and they'd get that $4 a day. It was a working situation. You came in here to work. Not much light, a lot of sweat.
What was the quality of the ore here in Calico? Was it different from any other parts of the country?
It was different in character from silver ore they found up, say, in Virginia City, the famous Comstock, and that was in kind of a bluish material. Here at Calico, a lot of the silver occurred in the reddish rock. This is a sample here, a lot of jasper in it. This is a lot of iron in it. The whitish you see, there's barite in here also. You've got a little bit of silver left as kind of a lead, a dark color. There's a story, kind of dramatic, that Charlie Meacham, one of the first locators of the Silver King mine, that he had his axe handle, and as he hacked into a rock to break it open, that it came out silver plated. But I'm not quite sure if that was quite that dramatic. And Jim and John Mulcahy did own this mine that we're standing in. It was called the Silver Monument. At the time, they renamed it the Maggie Mine.
They actually lived in here.
Spent some winter nights in here. That was their mine, yes.
And that was because it was cold outside?
Yes, it was. In the high desert in the winter, yes, it was.
Back in the 1800s, they obviously didn't have electricity, so what did they use to light the mines?
I've got you supplied right here, a candle and a candle holder. And this baby had attachments. It had a hooked end here. You could hook it in the brim of your hat. It had a spiked end. You could nail it into the wall. You were maybe given 2 candles a day. They lasted a pretty long time for your shift, but this was the light. This was what they had, was candlelight. In the 1890s, then there was more use of the carbide lamps. You'll hear about those with mining. But for Calico, 1880s, it was candles.
As I walk through here, I get a funny feeling. It's not a feeling of fear, but a feeling of isolation. I mean, even today, what if an earthquake happened right now? We had a cave-in, no water, no food, no contact with the outside world. It's a scary feeling.
This is the kind of miner's cabin you would have seen here. A lot of these are authentic ones. They just were rebuilt over time. But it was one man without a family, so he didn't need a large house. Plus, lumber was expensive. A lot of them didn't plan to be here for the rest of their lives. They wanted to make money and leave. But very little is left from the old days. Most of the time with wood being valuable out here in the desert, people would take down wooden structures and use the wood for something else. A lot of history out in this valley. This was a major transportation corridor even before Calico was even founded. That huge kind of cone-shaped pile of material, kind of reddish and greenish, and that's all waste rock. So it's dumped out, and it's called a dump or tailings pile from one of the major mines here, the Silver King mine.
Well, how did the railroads or the narrow gauge railroads get the ore down to town where they could process it?
Well, the gravity was used for the ore to be dumped down chutes. So just gravity at a certain pitch angle, the ore would come down into these bins, they called them ore bins, and the train cars on the railroad would park underneath the bin, and then they could load them that way, and just like your smaller ore cars, only on wheels and on a track. There is a story of a little train wreck that happened, and the one engineer had a curtain closed because of the rain and the fog. Didn't see the other guy coming. You'd think, well, they would ring the bell or blow the whistle. The only two little narrow gauge trains on the desert, and there's a little wreck. The mail dog, Dorsey, they carried the mail to the Bismarck mining camp, traveled about 1.5 miles one way. This was part of the route he took on these rugged mountains. Some of the miners made little leather boots for him to wear on his 4 paws to protect them from the rough rocks.
And he went over, delivered the mail, they put the other mail in, he came back.
His saddlebags on his back.
So how did they find silver? Was some guy just walking up this draw one afternoon and his wife kicked him out of the house?
The story has to do with a stolen horse. A man was down in the valley below running a stagecoach station, and his horse disappeared. And he tracked it, and he found that it came up here to these rocky foothills, and on the way of tracking his horse, he noticed the colorful hills here, and at the time, they were discovering silver near Barstow. Thought it looked like it might have been a good area to find silver or gold in. He didn't find his horse, but a couple years passed by, and he told his sons about it. And that's when the strike in Barstow was going on, about 11 miles from here. So a group got together to go up into the mountain there and to find it. Well, it looked like lead on the ground, like soft, like your pencil lead. They had to take some samples to be tested, the assay process, and they found that yes, the value of silver was very high. And then the rush was on to stake the claims, and then the mining town just bloomed from there.
Now the West is full of towns like Calico who for a brief moment in time experience fame and fortune, and that's better than nothing at all. Thanks for riding with us, folks, and we'll see you next week on Cowboys.